Welcome to Catholic Voices in Africa, confronting violence with the power of active nonviolence. This is the third in a series of online roundtables on nonviolence at the heart of the gospel and at the core of the mission of the Catholic Church. My name is Sister Wamoyo Wachira, a Loreto sister from Kenya, where I am a lecturer and program leader in peace and conflict studies at St. Paul's University in Nairobi. I also have the honor of serving as co-president of Pax Christi International. Pax Christi is a global Catholic network of over 100 organizations on 6 continents, rooted in their local realities and working for peace, justice, and reconciliation. Many of you have participated in our programs. As part of our work, we have created the Catholic Nonviolence Initiative, which has organized this webinar, as well as others on Latin America and the Caribbean, Asia Pacific, immigration, and climate justice. To begin our time together, we were going to have Archbishop Fortunatus leading us in prayer, but he will be maybe joining us later. So let's pray. Merciful God, you sent your son, Jesus, our brother, to reveal through his life and teaching your divine, self-giving love, and thus to incarnate in our world the power of nonviolence, capable of overcoming all forms of violence and of reconciling humanity in justice and peace. May we be transformed by this force of truth and self-giving love, so that we can apply it courageously in our violence-stricken world. Amen. And the prayer is from Hildegard Gosmeyer. We have adapted it. Again, welcome. The point of this webinar is to focus on the concrete experience of the power of nonviolence in Africa. We will hear testimonies from Catholic women and one man who have directly experienced the way of faithful nonviolence in their context. Then others around this virtual table who represent the richness of the Catholic Church in Africa will receive and reflect on these experiences, especially in light of how they might inspire new directions the Church can take to deepen its commitment to gospel nonviolence. We are deeply grateful that His Excellency Archbishop Fortunatus and Archbishop Odama will be joining us in this webinar. We are also deeply grateful to each one of you for your presence and participation. We would like to bring the greetings of the men, women, young people, and children of Africa that are going to benefit from these interactions that we'll have during this webinar. Many of you are church leaders who normally would be asked to present a keynote speech at a webinar like this. Here, we have asked you to listen to these stories and offer your reflections. We believe this will contribute to a rich process and deeper understanding of transformational nonviolence. In all of this, we have been inspired by Pope Francis, who has called the world to follow the way of nonviolence, as when he said, to be true followers of Jesus today includes embracing his teaching about nonviolence. In the most local and international ordinary situations and in the international order, may nonviolence become the hallmark of our decisions, our relationships, and our actions, and indeed our political life in all its forms. And may we make active nonviolence our way of life. I would like to begin by briefly introducing each of those present in different ways that they represent the church, the Catholic community in Africa. We are grateful that you are with us today to receive and reflect on testimonies that we will hear shortly, and you will be invited to do that in the way the Spirit guides you. Since Archbishop Fortunatus and Archbishop Odama are not here, I will introduce them when they arrive. So I begin by introducing Father Stan Ilo. Father Stan is from Nigeria and a Catholic priest of the Ugu Diocese, Nigeria. Currently, he is a research professor of World Christianity and African Studies at the Center for World Catholicism and Intercultural Theology at DePaul University in Chicago, USA. He is also an honorary professor of religion and theology at Durham University, Durham, England, and visiting research scholar at the Institute of African Studies of the University of Nigeria. He is the coordinating servant of the Pan-African Catholic Theology and Pastoral Network, commonly known as PACTPAN, and the North American coordinator of the project, Doing Theology from Existential Peripheries, a project of the Dicastery for Integral Human Development of the Holy See. He is author and editor of numerous works, and among these works is his most recent works, Ecological Ethics for Cosmic Flourishing, and also A Poor and Merciful Church. He has 2 doctorates, one in Sociology of Education from the University of South Africa, and one in Theology from the University of St. Michael's College, University of Toronto. Welcome, Father Stan. Then we have Sister Seraphine Christopher. Sister Seraphine is from Kenya and is a member of the congregation of the Incarnate Word Sisters living in Karen, Nairobi, Kenya. She is a professional counselor psychologist specializing in loss, grief, and trauma counseling. She is also a mentor or peer counselor. Sister has a degree from the Catholic University of Eastern Africa and was previously a nursery school teacher. She has been trained by Pax Christi International in active nonviolence and peace building, trauma healing, and nonviolent communication. Also among those who are going to listen to the stories is Emmanuel Ira. Emmanuel is from South Sudan. He is the country director for Pax Netherlands, South Sudan office, where he works to support partners on various projects to transform intra and intercommunal violence by building peace from the bottom up. Among us also, we have Sister Philo Hirota, MMB. She's from Japan. Sister Philo serves as a consultant for the Catholic Council for Justice and Peace of the Japanese Bishops' Conference, former executive coordinator of Macedonian Missionaries of Belize, and former board member of Pax Christi International. She is a member of the Preparatory Commission for the 16th Ordinary General Assembly of the Synod of Bishops and will participate in the Synod. Sister Philo has served in Nicaragua, Mexico, the Philippines, and Rome. She is a board member for the Women's Active Museum of War and Peace and on the executive committee of Pax Christi's Catholic Nonviolence Initiative. Also, we have Ms. Martha Okumu from Kenya. Martha is the executive director of Peace Tree Network, a registered trust in Kenya, working in the field of peace building and conflict transformation, human rights, gender development, research, and advocacy. Then we have Father James Oyet. All these are going to listen to the stories that we are going to hear today. Father James Oyet is from South Sudan. He's a Catholic priest and has a PhD in philosophy. And he's the General Secretary of the South Sudan Council of Churches. Having grown through decades of war, Father James is passionate about peace and reconciliation. As the SSCC General Secretary, he works on initiatives to enhance peace building, healing, and reconciliation in South Sudan. This SCC plays a critical role in building a sustainable peace through implementing their action plan for peace. Then I would like to introduce Father Matthew Pagan. Father Matthew is from South Sudan. He's the Vice Chancellor of Catholic University of South Sudan. And prior to this, he was the coordinator of the Justice and Peace Commission of the Diocese of Malacan. He holds a PhD in canon law from the Pontifical Urban University. Next, we have Dujune Serukabuza. He's from Rwanda, but living in Belgium. He is the Pax Christi International Africa Coordinator. Among us also, we have Esther Soma, the Senior Project Officer at Pax for Peace in South Sudan. She has provided technical support to the delegates in the peace agreement negotiations in South Sudan and worked as program specialist on women, peace, and security for United Nations Women. John William, on the other hand, is the representative of Pax South Sudan. He works in solidarity with committed groups of people to address issues brought by war among communities. I am one of the members. I had already introduced myself, but I would like to add that I also serve in the executive committee for Pax Christi's Catholic Nonviolence Initiative. Also present among us is Nicholas Paz, Professor Ken Butigan, Marie Dennis, the former co-president Pax Christi International, who are leaders in the Catholic Nonviolence Initiative. Then we do acknowledge the presence of Isabel and Anne-Marie, who will be giving their special service as interpreters. I will introduce each of those giving testimony in a few minutes as when they will begin to share. But before then, we will have an overview of violence in the Africa region. Nonviolence responds to horrific violence in our world. Violence is any physical or emotional harm, but also every form of injustice experienced at all levels of our wounded world: personal, interpersonal, social, systemic, and worldwide. Before we turn more fully to nonviolence, it is important to have a sense of the violence that confronts the people of Africa. To gain a sense of this, we are grateful to have with us Father Matthew Pagan, who will provide us with a brief overview. Father Matthew Pagan, you are most welcome to give us this overview of the violence that affects our people in Africa. I would like to welcome you, Your Excellency Archbishop Fortunatus, and welcome you. We had given you the slot for the prayer, but we will be giving you an opportunity to speak to us on the sharing of your reflection. We will be giving you an opportunity. But before I do that, I would like the people gathered here to know who you are, so that when they see your face, they are able to identify. So you are most welcome, and allow me to introduce you officially just for people to know you. And then later on, I'll be giving you an opportunity to speak to us. So we are very grateful to have Archbishop Fortunatus. Archbishop is originally from Nigeria. He is the secretary of the section for fast evangelization and the new particular churches of the dicastery for evangelization. He served as the permanent observer of the Holy See to the United Nations Office and specialized agencies in Geneva and to the World Trade Organization. Archbishop Fortunatus was also the representative of the Holy See to the International Organization for Migration and served as apostolic nuncio in Nicaragua and several other countries. We will hear more from him when he speaks. So you are most welcome, and we feel very privileged for you being among us as a prophetic voice and as a shepherd of the people of God. You are most welcome. I had mentioned that we are now going to hear an overview of the violence that confronts, that affects our people in Africa, and Father Matthew Pagan, the Vice Chancellor in South Sudan, is going to lead us through that. So welcome, Father Matthew. Before I introduce the great women and the man who are going to give us their stories of how they have addressed violence in their context, I'll just point out that Africa is a beautiful continent. In fact, we speak about it as a confetti, different parts that form a very beautiful whole. However, as beautiful as it is, Africa faces a lot of challenges, especially from conflicts. And these conflicts take place within families, in communities, Even in churches, we have seen all those different forms of violence, and even structural, systemic. So this is the type of violence that those who are sharing our stories will be giving us their own experiences, helping us to understand how they have managed to deal with those, yes, type of violence. So, so that's what the 4 change makers are going to share with us. With that in background, but Father Matthew was to give us more background, but as it is, he's still trying to work on his microphone. So at this stage, I would like to invite our change makers to tell us, to share with us their experiences of how they have managed to confront or to address the kind of violence they are experiencing in their communities. When Father Matthew will be ready, he will give him a chance, and he can present it in whichever way he finds helpful. Now, we are very grateful to have with us the change makers, each of whom will share a specific story of nonviolence in action from their experience or the experience of their communities. We will hear from all of these testimonies. Then we will invite our larger group of participants to reflect on them. I would like to begin with Sister Mary Atimango. Sister Mary Atimango is from Uganda, but working in South Sudan. She's a member of the Sacred Heart Congregation. Sister Mary Atimango is a non-violence trainer in South Sudan. She teaches non-violence to groups of people, especially those susceptible to violent tendencies, primary and secondary school students, and also among families and even among gang members. Sister Mary Atimango, you are welcome to share your story and your experience with us. And you'll have 10 minutes to do that. You're welcome.
Yes, thank you. I think I was already introduced. I am a secretary sister, as you said, a teacher by profession, and then a trainer, OTOT of nonviolence. Of late, I am also a TOT of women mediators in South Sudan, the only religious woman who did that training. I have very many testimonies, but at the interest of time, I will take only 2 out of the many. One of the testimony that I have, it is reaching the violent people. Here we call them the niggers. When I talk of niggers, these are the street kids, those who have grown big, then they no longer stay on the street. They have taken another trend where they go using pangas and other tools for killing people or loot them in order to survive. And I managed to reach these people. When I was informed that I should reach them, I say I'm not telling the sisters because if I tell them, they would stop me. And I managed to go there. When I reached them, the first time it was not easy. I was overwhelmed by fear because you don't know what next. These are the people who are unpredictable. But what gave me courage, where one of them said that, sister, you are good. Nobody reaches us. You have managed to reach us. Then to show that truly I went there, I allowed them if I could take their photo. They took my photo together with theirs. I brought it to the sisters. When I explained, they say, you are so daring. How do you reach that kind of people? I say, I've reached them. This is the evidence. And I went on with them, training them. I started with the 6. Later on, the number was increasing day by day. We reached to 22 of them. And they managed to grab something. They surrendered their tools. But their question was, sister, now we have surrendered our tools. What next? There I became also tongue-tied because I do not know what I would do for them. Then we continue with them. Whenever I was going with someone, I would ask their opinion. If they don't allow, I don't take, because they think that you are going for false finding. Then the second testimony that I would give you is the one of the secondary school. That is Sacred Heart Secondary School. Is one of our schools. Lives and tradition. So as all of us are aware that the cancer of South Sudan is tribalism. They carry this along to them. At the beginning, they could fight. They could quarrel all the time. You find that the administration and the teachers on duty had no rest because you have to solve the problem. But the testimony that I can give you today, when I went through with them, as we talk, they no longer fight. They no longer quarrel. They look at themselves like brothers and sisters. And with that, the administration of the school have opted nonviolence to be part of their syllabus, to be trained in the school because of the goodness that they have seen. So these are the 2 testimonies. At the interest of time, I could not go more than this because as I've been given only 10 minutes. And this is what I've said, but other testimony also, this active nonviolence as you train, I myself have been a victim as I come from North Uganda. All of us are aware of LRA, war which took decades. I was affected as a girl where I went in exile in Congo. And then recently in 2018, where we lost everything. As I talk now, we live in rental houses. And this came timely because as I train, it has healed me. Those who knew me before today, if they see me, they don't believe because I found that my stretch has been released and I took it so vigorously because I do not want others to experience what I have experienced of having sleepless night, not knowing what to do, moving with the tears. But as I talk now, I think active nonviolence has really helped me. I have discovered who I am and I am able to help others. It is an indication that when someone has gone through certain things, you become like a warrior and you embrace it. I really embrace it. And as such, I feel so courageous to reach anywhere. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sister Mary, for that testimony, personal, and also the way you have gone above your own experiences and supported people in the same way that you have experienced. Now, I would like to take, before I call the other change makers, I would like to invite Archbishop Fortunatus to share with us his response and what the Spirit is guiding him to share with us in this particular webinar, because as I said earlier, he has the prophetic voice in the church, and also as a shepherd, we know that we are going to be enriched by his experience. And as I would like to just focus that the two questions that are guiding the reflection before I invite Archbishop is the insights of gospel nonviolence that flow from this experience, like the one we have had from Sister Mary, and what difference if we were to pick this path she has chosen, our church would take, and then how can we do this as leaders and the people of God? Archbishop Fortunatus, you are welcome.
Okay, I go back to
yes,
what I was saying before, which is that I'm grateful to the organizers for wishing to associate me with this beautiful, great initiative on nonviolence. I thank Ken and Professor Stanilo for wishing to bring me back to this initiative. They already invited me some years ago when I was in Nicaragua to the US, and here now I'm in Rome. Violence. You know, I always like to go back to our sources. Our major source is the Bible. And the first case of violence we have in the Bible is in Genesis chapter 4. So to go back to know how to resolve or handle violence, we have also to go back to the sources. I tell people that we are, with violence, we are like a computer or a mobile telephone that has begun to misbehave, and we want to fix it. One way to fix it is to do a resetting. And when you enter the command to do a resetting, it gives you one suggestion to go back to factory setting. So one way to solve violence, address violence, is by taking ourselves back to the factory setting. And that factory setting is the original project of God on each and every one of us. That original project of God on each and every one of us is found in the book of Genesis, chapter 1, verse 26 and verse 27. And that's the place we read, and God said, let us make man in our image and likeness. And then verse 27, in God's image and likeness, he made them, male and female, he made them, which means that originally God wanted us. God's original project on us is that of creating people that will reflect him, like a mirror that will reflect him, or better still, a camera that will be focused on him so that it will be capturing him all the time. But if we were to go on then and read the book of Genesis, chapter 3, verses 6 and 7, we are going to see that after the first sin, the sin of Eve and Adam, we are told that after they had eaten that fruit, their eyes were opened. And when their eyes were opened, they were no longer seeing God. They were seeing themselves. So what happened? The focus of their camera, which was supposed to be on God, switched and started focusing on themselves. Instead of doing photography, they began to do selfie. And that is when we begin to have violence, when everything is focused on ourselves. We think only of our own interest. We want the world to rotate again around us. We think that everybody must be like us, think like us, do everything like us, model themselves on us. We forget that God, just before creating man and woman, human being in his image and likeness, had created all living things in their differences, in their species. If we go back to Genesis also, chapter 1, all the way from verse 18 to verse 25, 25 before the creation of the human being, we are told that God began to create living beings all in their differences, in their differences. So violence begins when we begin to lose sight of the fact that God made us different from one another as a means of beauty. The beauty of creation is enhanced by the differences that God put into creation. And if we are able to manage our differences, if we are able to appreciate, accept, and integrate these differences, we live in harmony. When we begin to lose sight of the need to appreciate differences, when we are not able to manage differences, we get into conflicts, and then we begin to go into violence. That is why the first violence in the Bible came after the human being had stopped focusing on God and started focusing on himself and herself, on themselves. So we have then the story of Cain and Abel. And that story of violence runs through the Old Testament, where the human being is put at the center as a measurement of everything, even the measurement of love. Because the highest commandment of the law of the Old Testament is loving your neighbor as yourself. So always using yourself at the center. And that is why, in that type of situation, we have also the rule of vengeance, which is considered even as a golden rule, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, as we find in the book of Exodus, chapter 21, verses 23, 24, and 25. Now, that changes in the New Testament. That changes because in the New Testament, after repeating the teaching of the Old Testament, Jesus, before leaving the world, gave his followers a new commandment. And that is very, very succinct, very clear. In John chapter 13, verse 34, Jesus says clearly, I give you a new commandment. A new commandment I give you. No longer loving like neighbor like yourself, but loving like I, Jesus, have loved. Loving like Jesus. That is the novelty of Christianity. And that is the novelty that we can use in fighting violence. No longer slapping back, no longer eye for eye, no longer tooth for tooth, but following the example of Jesus Christ. And what is the example of Jesus Christ? The love of the cross, the love of the embrace, the love of sacrifice. Now, if we are not ready to love the other person, and the love of the cross is a risking love, because when you want to embrace the other person, you expose your heart, and the other person can harm you, even kill you. So the love that goes against violence is usually a risking love. And that is the love we are called to preach, called to diffuse, called to bring to the world. People think you are stupid when you begin to talk about this type of love. And that is why people who speak about nonviolence, people who speak about bringing peace, people say they are stupid because they say they don't know their right. And that is one thing about Jesus Christ. What about a person who says, what about my right? I have to fight for my right and get it back. Then I ask, what about Jesus? St. Paul, writing to the Philippians chapter 2, verses 5 to 11, we often speak about human rights. You know, when I was representing the Holy See to the United Nations, people were speaking about human rights right, human rights left, and I was telling them we should go a little bit beyond that and speak about divine rights. Jesus Christ had divine rights as God, and then he had also human rights as man. If you read Philippians chapter 2, verses 5 to 11, you see what Jesus did with his divine rights and his human rights. Though he was in the form of God, he did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped at, but he emptied himself of his divine rights and took up human form. And even as human being, he also emptied himself of his human rights and took up the form of a slave. And even as the form of a slave, he emptied himself again of the rights of a slave and accepted death. And that is the extreme manifestation of love to which we are challenged as Christians. Yes, Jesus did not say we should not defend human rights. Jesus did all these things not defending his own rights, but defending our own rights. The real Christian who avoids violence sacrifices quite often his own rights, but defends the rights, fights for the rights of other people, those in need, those that are being oppressed, those that are being marginalized. The Christian fights for their rights, but he sacrifices his own rights. So thinking of the other person, thinking of the good of the other person, thinking of how not to harm the other person, but how to look for harmony between the differences that God brought into creation, that is the best strategy, the best way to reach human harmony. Harmony in our society, in our human community, without going for violence. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Archbishop Fortunatus, for that profound sharing. You have taken us back to the roots of what violence is, and actually also given us ways of addressing that violence. And I just picked a few points that will help us reflect on what you have shared. You have actually used the modern language of selfies. You know, we want to take selfies. We are so concerned about ourselves that we forget that it's not about us. Jesus was not fighting for us, for himself, but for us. And you have also reminded us that it's God, we see God. And when we see God, then we start forgetting ourselves. And also appreciate the way you have led us to see that nonviolence, the gospel nonviolence, is about appreciating differences. So that it's not always about us, it's accepting differences and then creating harmony. And I could go on, and I got a new insight about divine rights. You talked about divine rights and kind of connecting it with non-violence, that, you know, we are so concerned about ourselves, our things, our rights, but what is Jesus? What is God inviting us to do? So thinking about other people's goodness of other people. And you also led us to that profound teaching of Christ, the issue of loving the enemy. And I could go on, and I know you will share with us that sharing that, and actually at the beginning I talked about your prophetic voice, and we have actually had that prophetic voice. And you are welcome later to stay with us as long as you want and to share more during this as the Spirit will lead you. Thank you very much. And I feel we are very privileged to have you among us. Now we will call on Father Stan Ilo. Father Stan, you had one of the sharing the story, the experience, and your own experience, I'm sure. You are welcome to share with us because I'm aware you may have another commitment to your work. So you are most welcome to share with us.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Wamuyu, and brothers and sisters. Thank you especially to Archbishop Fortune, who has been a friend and a mentor. And after listening to him, I am struggling to put my thoughts together because I was reflecting on what he was saying. But I like to propose, after listening to Sister Atimango, 4 movements I saw in the witness of Sister Atimango that I think can also help us to develop, deepen, and appropriate her own experience with what Archbishop Fortune has said, the insight of gospel nonviolence from the biblical perspective. So first is from Sister Atimango. The first movement is what I call the diagnostic moment. Sister Atimango said that I decided to go out to the margins to reach these killers. I decided to go out to the margins. And hearing Sister Atimango, I thought I was hearing Pope Francis's Fratelli Tutti, number 84, where Pope Francis asks us to expand our frontiers and give a universal dimension to our call to love. So Sister Atimango was moved to expand her frontiers, like Pope Francis says, by going out to the margins to meet these young men. So the work of nonviolence will require that you go beyond your own small world. And then the second moment in Sister Atimango's testimony is what I call the pragmatic moment. So in her diagnostic moment, the words of Sister is that I discovered, and you all know, maybe not all of us, but some of us, what she calls the cancer of South Sudan. The cancer of South Sudan. So gospel nonviolence requires some sophistication to understand what the problem is, to be able to analyze the problem, and then to apply the pragmatic moment, which in this case for Sister Atimango was then to reach out to the boys, to go to them, and to actually understand their context, their pain, their tribulation, so that she could encounter them. And then the third moment in Sister's testimony is what I call the kenotic moment. Like Jesus, she went, not just I want to go. You know, so many people want peace in the world. They want a better Africa, but they wanted just staying in the comfort of their own zones. But Sister decided then to have this kenotic moment, and Sister says, I went and I reached them, and I walked with them. So like Pope Francis talks about the having the smell of the sheep, but also she had boots on the ground, not simply thinking about it or talking about it. She designed the practice, and then she went. And in that process, the final moment is what I call the transformative moment, when, according to Sister, I was bearing my own pain. I was bearing my own suffering because I am also a victim of this crisis. I received healing, but also we all received healing together, including all these boys. And the word that I like to use in terms of what difference does this kind of journey make for us is Sister's constant word. Sister Timango said, I said to the boys, surrender your weapon. And Sister did not say this like law and order. I mean, they would listen to you. They listen to you, Sister, because, like you said, they trusted you. They knew that you are not there to take their pictures in order to report them to the police, that you understand how this violence has touched them, the manipulation, the exploitation, and the victimization of these victims, who themselves are perpetrators of evil, but they are also caught in this contradiction of history, in which we can see multiple iterations of forms of injustice, oppression, and exploitation of the people. And at the end, Sister brought transformation. And that transformation is what we all believe happens when we all surrender our weapons and put on the armor of Christ, the armor of love that Archbishop Fortune talked about. And Sister, thank you for being such a witness. And I think the courage, and that's the last word I want here. Sister said, what gave me courage to go to the bush was an inner desire to meet them. And these people accepted me because they saw goodness. They said, Sister, you are good. So to be a champion of nonviolence, there has to be a triumph of goodness that is not simply something that is made up, but something that is so concrete because it's prophetic and it's true. So I will stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Father Stan, for that response to Sister Mary's sharing. Reminding us about the trial for goodness, concrete examples, and prophetic voice, and talking about that Sister went beyond the small world and capturing her gift of listening to the people and capturing, you picked out some of those statements that she made in her sharing. And also, I captured from your picking of Sister Mary's sharing about expanding our frontiers. So that's what nonviolence is about, what Bishop Fortunatus had also brought out, that going beyond ourselves. So thank you very much for that sharing on Sister's reflections and also her experiences. Please feel free to stay as long as you want, and also to share again if you feel moved to do so. So we'll allow Archbishop Fortunatus to leave. He has requested because he has other commitments, but we are very grateful that he was able to come, and I'm sure Father Stan will also be doing the same, but feel free, Father Stan, to join us in the other reflections, and also we will understand if you have to leave before we are finished. Next, we will listen to Eshaya Kuku Daud. Eshaya is from Sudan. Eshaya is a student at St. Paul's University, taking masters in peace and conflict studies. He's also a community and peace builder, a global humanitarian and advocate for peace and nonviolent actions, He was born during the Sudanese Civil War. Eshia's life was shaped by violence and conflict until he was introduced to peace and nonviolence. He is the founder of the Peace and Nonviolent Action Project called The Mountains, Youth Nonviolent Actions and Peace, a grassroots project that trains and empowers youth through peaceful means and actions. You are most welcome, Eshia. Karibu.
Thank you. Thank you, Sister Omuyu, Dr. Omuyu. I always prefer to call you the Mother of Peace. I must say I am very grateful. It is my pleasure and honor to be here with you. Roundtable conversation. None of you will not feel how I'm feeling right now. It's a very grateful moment. But because of the time, the 10 minutes that are allocated to me, I will not explain how grateful I am to be here. I will continue to the testimony. I am Ishaya, as she has introduced me, from Sudan. I come from a war-torn country. You all know what it is going through right now. I'm sure if somebody is to make a phone call in Khartoum, we'll hear gunshots as you're speaking to that person. I particularly come from the region called the Nuba Mountains, a very volatile region and not peaceful. I would use that word. I have two stories, but I will not focus on my experience because the 10 minutes will not allow me to do that. I'll briefly say something about it and then round it up with the non-violent actions. The day I was born, the world was not fair to me, but I also feel like it is that day. That's why I'm here to speak about it. I was introduced to the world with artilleries falling all over. And I've always told people that I don't remember I don't know, not that I don't remember, but I don't know my birthday because I was not born at the hospital. There are no hospitals. And when my mom tries to tell me when I was born, she gives it with events. That time when Arabs came to take your cows, that's when you were born. So I can estimate. And there were some small rains. So I would just estimate the months. It could be August or July. I am a prime example of somebody who has experienced conflict and a person who believed that revenge is the best. That's one thing. I did not know that that is not me. I am a different person. But that is what I thought I was. Because up to now, I always talk of the dilemma that I am in. You are seated in the house and somebody says, let us go and kill Yeshaya and take his house or take his things. And as Yeshaya, what would I do? Do I sit and pray to Jesus? Or I take a stick around me or a metal or a panga or a gun and defend myself? It is the dilemma. I will not get into that dilemma too much. But I want us to know that I am a child with two experiences, the experience of conflict and peace. I am going to focus on peace. Like I said, my journey throughout has been violently shaped. And I think my story, I always put God first, that it's God that guides me through it. Because when I got out of the Nuba Mountains in 2005, I did not know that I'm going for peace studies. I only left that I'm going to study, but I did not know what I'm going to. But along the way, I picked the interest in studying peace and conflict because after understanding the background where I come from, it became something interesting for me to learn. I wanted to know what is this peace and conflict? I need to know these two. Who beats who? I need to understand the two. So throughout my A level in Uganda, I decided to do studies in peace and conflict here in Nairobi at USIU. And I decided to further it to study peace building and conflict transformation at St. Paul. And while doing this, the missing puzzles started bringing themselves to me. The testimony is that I was so eager to study peace and conflict, to transform the society from where it is right now. But there was something I was missing: the advocacy and the training of peace building actions, nonviolent actions. Little did I know that it will be brought to me 2 years back. I think 1 year back in 2022. Pax Christi brought for me something I was missing, and I can't stop thanking them. The training was done at St. Paul. It added what I missed. And that has triggered me to develop the projects Sister Omuyu mentioned. I am not any different from the ones I left behind. I believe so. And I trust that it is the truth that I'm saying, because the environment shapes who you are, and you think you are that person, but you are not. Earlier on, I said I was a very violent man. I've always believed in slapping back. But I just came and noticed that, no, I am actually not that person. The studies and the trainings that have been given to me have totally shown me that I'm a different person. Whatever the case, I no longer talk of the violence because of these trainings, particularly from the Pax Christi and the studies that have been given to me by the experts. One of them is here. She can attest. We always had several arguments with her, and she will tell you that I'm not the Shire she met on the first day, because I was not that. So I believe those ones that are also left are the same, to be trained like me, but we lack education. So the lack of education will always lead them into that violence. I have always prayed and said I must do something to help them become non-violent people. They must talk of non-violent actions. They must talk of peace. If I am able to be changed from what I was, then nothing will also stop them from being changed. So the education has really trained me to become the non-violent person that I am. And like I've said, the trainings, these are the trainings, particularly from the Pax Christi. It was a short training, but very powerful, that empowered things that needed to be put in me for many years. The 2 days or 3 days or 4 days did a work that can be done in so many years. I am the prime example that has benefited from that. And it is exactly the project that I developed from. Immediately I left that, I said I have to do something. And I had an idea, yes, but how do I connect it? What do I do? Pax Christi gave me that. It answered me all those questions. I have a very long story. I am going to stop here, but I will say those who started this initiative, they must know that it is true doing its work. It has changed people. I am the prime example here that it has changed me. I am very proud for the group that initiated the Pax Christi and nonviolent actions and the initiative entirely. Thank you very much. For those who want to hear my sad story and interesting, it's also emotional. Maybe we'll get me another time, not today. 10 minutes are less to share. It's a story of cuckoo. Thank you.
What a story of hope and share. We are grateful you are here to share with us that story of hope and your journey. And there will be people in this forum that will be responding to it. So I don't want to take away from them. So next we'll have Sister Angeli Dapio from Democratic Republic of Congo. She's a member of Congregation of the Servants of Jesus. in the Democratic Republic of Congo. She's the coordinator of emergencies at Caritas Bunia, a nonviolence trainer in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Sorry, I need to get more. So, welcome, Sister Angeli, to share with us your story.
Thank you. Well, I think that you can hear me. Can you hear me? Yes. Thank you very much. So I'm Sister Angèle, and I'm working for the coordination of emergencies at Caritas Bunia. So thank you. I've been asked to share a few experiences regarding the initiatives I've undertaken since I've become a sister. I've spent a lot of time in areas where I found atrocities, exactions, wars, armed conflicts involving either foreign rebels or local rebels. And this really hit me a lot because I was also a refugee in South Sudan. I lived in Yei. I was hosted by the bishop of the diocese of Yei. So we went through disastrous situations for a number of decades in our country which has also been war-torn. And in the province where I live, well, this province can be considered as a blood province, as a war province. So I'm a coordinator of these emergencies, and I reached out to traumatized people that were stressed by that situation, even people that had been mutilated by the war, displaced people, people that have been hit by this war that has reached us until today. And so I've gained some experiences. So so after studying, so in fact at the end of my studies, I examined the violence cycle, and in the beginning I was really frightened. I didn't want to see any blood. I didn't want to see any dramatic situations. But then, of course, I started my studies, and I then got used. And this really prompted me to reach out to displaced people, refugees, mutilated people in our country. And I also had some experiences in order to try and alleviate a little bit that violence. So at a given time, I was on the side of displaced people, and all of a sudden, I saw a lot of militias coming while I was working with those displaced people. And of course, when I saw them, everyone was frightened. You know, I needed to be courageous. I had to get closer to them. So I got close to them, and so I got closer to those people, and I asked them, but can we sit down? And they gave me this opportunity, but I told them, please don't get here in the distribution center with your weapons. And so this is what they did. They left their weapons outside and they got in. And we were in the middle of the bush, and I was talking to them and also listening to their intentions. Indeed, they wanted to really introduce chaos within the distribution center. I was listening to them, you know, and And so we talked about violence, and we said that non-violence would allow us to work in a quiet environment. But I'm sorry, the picture is frozen. Do you have the same?
So far, like, I mean, her story is really profound, and as she has shared so far, you know, what she has gone through. And as I said, we will be having people responding to that. So now we have Elise. Oh, she's back. She's back. I think we let her continue.
Vous m'excuserez parce que la connexion avec la pluie, ça dérange. Merci.
I'm
Et puis,
sorry,
quand il...
but the connection was frozen, Sue. Sorry about this.
Donc, lorsque je les ai convertis, ils ont donné le temps pour moi, ils m'ont écouté,
they
et
finally
je leur ai parlé, ils ont
really
laissé
gave
la
more
situation
time to us. And the situation really got quiet, and so
les atrocités à pleine
I mean,
activité.
this was something that was really reassuring, being able to put an end to atrocities through these discussions. And the
seconde était celle-ci. Lors d'une visite, j'ai pensé dans un village,
during
et
some
c'était aussi les
visits
déplacés de guerre.
organized to
Lorsqu'ils
those
sont pris dans ces
villages,
villages,
sometimes you
un
have
fils de
war
12
displaced
ans était
people,
en train de
and
voler.
you had a son, you
Et
know, a
le
young
papa
boy,
était
age
déjà
12,
traumatisé à situation de
who
guerre.
was stealing, you know, that kid was
voulait encore
traumatized by
ajouter
the
des
war.
situations dramatiques.
And of course,
Et
this might
le
have
parent
led
a
to
décidé
more drama,
d'égorger
and
le fils.
parent decided
Lorsque
to
j'avançais,
kill
j'ai trouvé
his
beaucoup
son,
de
you
gens
know, to
sur la
slaughter
cour
his
avec des
son.
mains à la tête en train de
And
pleurer.
so
Je demande qu'est-ce qu'il y
so
a?
people
Ils me
crying
disent,
around
il y
me,
a un
and
papa
so
qui veut
I
égorger son
said,
fils.
what's going on? And
Je
then
suis
someone
entrée,
told me a
entre-temps,
father
tout
wants
le
to
monde
kill, to
m'empêchait
slaughter
d'entrer.
his son, and
J'ai pris le
everyone
courage, je
tried
suis
to
entrée dans
prevent me
cette
from
maison
getting in. I took enough
et
courage, you
j'ai
know, to
trouvé
get
le
into
papa
that house,
avec des pains
and
à la
I
main, le
found
fils
the
ligoté,
father
suspendu.
with his son, you know, who
Je me suis
was
agenouillée, j'ai commencé à demander
hanging,
pardon, à les supplier,
and I
et il voulait me
knelt
remettre
down,
les
and
corps
I
parce
really
qu'il tue
asked him
le fils
to
appartient à
listen to
l'État.
me, because I
Et
said, you
l'État
know,
va mettre la main
don't
sur lui.
kill your
Il
son
m'a
because the
regardé,
son belongs to the
il a
state.
dit,
And the father
plutôt
watched me,
Dieu,
and
parce
he
que je ne sais
said,
pas d'où est-ce que cette sœur
well,
est venue.
I do not know
Je
where
lui ai
this
recommandé de
sisters
me remettre
come
les
from,
couteaux,
and
les yeux
I
agenouillés.
asked the
Il
father
m'a
to give
remis les
me
pains
the knife,
et je lui
and
ai remis de
he
l'eau pour qu'il
gave me
coupe
the
la
knife.
corde parce que le fils
And
était suspendu.
then, you know, I
Et
asked the
j'ai
father
tendu
to
les mains,
cut the rope because his son
il a
was hanging
coupé
there.
la corde, le fils est tombé entre mes bras.
So the son fell
Quand
into
je suis
my
sortie, tout le monde
arms when
s'écriait
the father cut
et
the
j'ai remis
rope.
le fils au
And
papa.
so I gave
Ça,
then the
c'était
son back
une
to
deuxième
his
expérience
father.
que j'ai vécue
And
en
so
luttant
this is
contre la
another
violence.
experience
Sans
that
peur,
I had,
je
really
suis entrée, je
using
n'ai pas.
nonviolence, so I
Et le
could get
troisième,
into that
peut-être
house. And
rapidement,
the
je pourrais
third
aussi partager parce que
one
ce sont des
I
expériences. Elles
would
sont
like to
nombreuses,
share, because
mais
of
j'ai
course
choisi
I've had
seulement
many
quelques-unes pour
experiences,
retenir beaucoup plus mon attention.
but
Et
this was
il y
another one.
avait toujours des guerres dans les
So
villages.
there were
Les
still wars going
autorités
on in the
et les miliciens ne
villages. The
s'attendaient pas. Et
authorities
les
and the
miliciens étaient en
militias
train
did not get along,
d'exécuter des
and
exactions. Et
militias
les
were
autorités étaient visées,
conducting
les
acts of
miliciens
violence.
et,
And
et continuaient avec les exactions.
so
Alors, les miliciens
this
se sont
violence went on,
fâchés pour
and
dire que pourquoi les
militians
autorités, etc.
got
Ils ont
angry against the
chassé les
authorities.
autorités. Le
I'm
fait
sorry,
de
the
chasser
sound
les
is not so
autorités
good, so we
était
can't
à la
hear the
brousse
lady.
4
We can't
kilomètres
hear
de la
Sister
cité
so
où nous
much.
étions.
So there were
J'ai
4
commencé à
kilometers
ramer
away
pour
from
moi,
the
je
place
voulais
where we
reconstruire
were.
ici. Je suis
And
allée d'abord
I
à pied et traversé
first
à pirogue la rivière
walked
pour atteindre
and I
donc
crossed the river
les autorités. Et
to
puis,
go and
bon,
reach
je
out
les ai
with the
conseillés de
authorities.
revenir.
And I
Là, j'ai
advised the
rencontré aussi
authorities to
les
come
miliciens
back to meet
pour
with the leaders
qu'ils
of the
libèrent les
militias
autorités qui
uh,
étaient toutes
in
dans la
order
brousse.
really engage in a discussion. So the person in charge gave me the time to talk, and so I could really communicate with people. And so they managed at the end of the day to find reconciliation with the militias. So thanks to my courage, I could manage to really allow those two groups to enter reconciliation.
So
I've had so many experiences, but what really pushed me to spread this non-violence is that, well, first, at the end of my studies, my thesis paper really gave me a lot of courage, you know, to undertake a number of things. Thanks to the training I went through, training for non-violence, non-violent communication, this was also helpful in overcoming many situations and overcoming my fears. But of course, reconciliation is not always easy. I'm sorry, the sound comes and goes.
Donc, vous êtes en train de vous attendre avec les miliciens.
People sometimes told me, yes, but you seem to agree with the militias. And I said, I am a sister. I need to do my utmost. And this is why even today I've kept on raising the awareness of militias, of the leaders, and I've highlighted the need for non-violent communication.
Voilà épée à quelques mots.
In a few words, so these were some of the experiences that I've had and that I wanted to share with you.
Par rapport à la réalité de vie que je suis en train de mener auprès de personnes vulnérables,
I've gone through.
Auprès de personnes déplacées,
so, and as I said, I'm working with displaced people.
Merci beaucoup.
So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sister Angeli, for sharing with us those deep experiences where you put your life at risk to save the people and to be with the people. There will be people responding to your story and others. So we are very, very grateful you're able to join us. Now, our last change maker is Elizabeth Kanini. Elizabeth is from Kenya. She's a non-violence practitioner and a human rights activist. She's an instructor of community education and mobilization for peace at Reconcile Peace Institute for more than 14 years. She has a master's in peace and international relations from Hekima Institute of Peace and International Relations in Nairobi, Kenya. She is the founder of the Horn of Africa Grassroots Peace Forum, what in short is HAP Forum. She has been part of the Catholic Nonviolence Initiative from its beginning at the 2016 Nonviolence and Just Peace Conference. She was also the recipient of the Berrigan McAllister 2023 Award at DePaul University, US. Karibu sana Kanini.
Thank you so much, Sister Wamuyu. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I could say it is called Roundtable, but for my ancestors, I would call it, we are seated here under this big tree of hope, where our ancestors always sat. After listening to the several sharings which have taken place, I think my role is only to say amen. Because as they shared, I felt we are sharing the same story. My story was their story. Their story was my story. We are sharing this when Africa, many people have lost hope in Africa because of the situations which we have heard from the sharing. when people have said peace is not possible. But listening to all this, I will add on top of my story to share that there is hope for peaceful Africa through embracing a non-violence means. I remember 10 years, around 14 years ago from now, I went to an area region with a lot of, which had faced a lot of violence and a prolonged violence. And when I went there, I did not have money. I did not have salary. I did not have a vehicle. But I had something which was very powerful in me, the spirit of non-violence. And that is why I started defining non-violence differently. Because reading books, non-violence was associated with protest, with all these kind of, the kind of protest, demonstration and all that. And people forgot this powerful aspect of non-violence, which was described by Pope Francis in his encyclical in 2017, that power of love. And that is what I had in my heart when I went to approach this situation. It was a war which had taken many years. And what happened is I began with myself, transformed myself. And I went to this region not perceiving these people as evil people. I perceived them as human beings. I perceived them as my fathers, mothers, brothers, and sisters. And that, out of my experience, was a very powerful way of transforming or disarming the people were already armed with a lot of violence. And going with this spirit, I built very strong relationship where in a patriarchal society, I was accepted as a member. I was accepted by those who regarded women as nobody in the society. And from there, I felt that when I look back at this experience is from my heart, reaching to these people with love, they started now seeing a new environment. These are people who have been born, many of them in war, and grew up in war. And when we started interacting and building relationship with the key decision makers who kind of gave permission for people to go for war, they started changing their perspective. And this flew also to the key perpetrators. These are the Morans. Morans are the key perpetrators in this ethnic conflict, especially in northern Kenya. And I perceived them as my brothers. I perceived them as I was not different from them. And I was surprised when I reflect on my experience with them. They became very close to me. And that is how in touch with them, they managed to take me to many other Morans, especially you could know the people have been engaged in violence because they usually have something wearing on their hands to show how many people they have killed. But they saw that I was not judging them. And I managed to and I was doing this to 2 ethnic groups. I was living among 2 ethnic groups. And I could do this to young people. This I call them the forgotten youth, those who live in the bush. I could go with them with this similar kind of love. And when I acted as a bridge to bring them together, and when they came together, they came first as enemies. And as we continued with them, interacting with them, 2 key Morans, or the young people, said that we have never been invited in any peace meeting. And this is a similar story shared by the sisters. These are the people we are being associated with the violence and nobody bothered about them. And 2 of them, I remember, when we were sharing a meal, they recognized each other. And they remembered several times they were to kill each other. And they were to kill each other during war. And they decided to say that we will no longer go to war. this meal we are sharing is better than the war we have encountered. So they managed to meet each other, not as enemies, but as human beings. And that love between them, and that deep relationship, because they even started exchanging gifts. And they were the key leaders in each community. They helped transform others. So this spirit of love flew from them to the rest of the people. And I also remember interacting with children. When I went there, then the world they knew was of revenge. The children were longing to grow up, to go and kill the enemy. Even they never saw anything good from the children from the other community. And through staying with them, trying to interact with them, that presence was very powerful to them, and different presence. I was not longing to kill anyone. And the children could kind of experience a bit of love when I was with them. And when I brought the children together, a similar experience happened. The children started playing together. And it reached to a point where the children started asking me, Madam, please buy us some balls, take us to the other community to play with the children from the other side. What am I saying, sharing this experience? Non-violence, I found it very powerful. And very powerful method for disarmament. The government has used so much artillery to disarm people who are already armed. And I remember through that love, one young people came to me with a gun and told me, Madam, what am I going to do with this gun? I no longer need it. I never used force, but the power of non-violence. And listening to the sharing which has gone on, and listening to my experience as well, I think that we have a lot of hope. And I think peace is possible if we embrace this kind of non-violence. I see the sisters in the bush reaching the people who have never been reached with the power of love, showing these people are human beings. And I found where people encountered as human beings and where they received a bit of love, they managed also to emanate this love or to spread this love. So mine is to share and say, if the Catholic Church can embrace this kind of way of solving problems in Africa, then we'll have a lot of peace in Africa. The Catholic Church is connected with a lot of people, all of Africa. If these seeds, if this kind of trainings kind of penetrates different aspects of the church, then I think if we have a few people transformed, they will go and transform the rest in the world, and we will have peace in Africa. And this is a powerful method which does not need a lot of money, a lot of vehicles. It needs a lot of good and committed heart, a Christian heart, a loving heart. And this heart will reach wherever there are people, because their heart will see brother, will see a sister, and will transform the enemy to become a brother and a sister. And that enemy will continue. The river of non-violence will continue flowing and bringing new life to Africa. And I think my sharing, I stop there because of the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kanini Watt. I know you're ending these stories with hope and saying that non-violence is possible. So, Emmanuel, I know you have deep experience with non-violence, and you have been listening to these great women and the men share their stories. Sister Philo, welcome to share with us what the Spirit is saying to you after listening to these stories. Yes, you can. Yes. Thank you, Sister Philo, for also bringing us to the reality that we are in a synod. I mean, there is that synodal journey and connecting it with non-violence. Father James, what are the stories saying to you? Is Father James there? Okay, We don't have, I was not able to see the list. Martha Okumu, what is the story saying to you? The different stories. What is the Spirit saying? Called John William.
Thank you very much, Sister Wamuyu.
Welcome.
I've listened to the beautiful sisters who have shared their testimonies. First of all, I would like to thank Sister Timango, and I'm right away telling her that we shall be visiting you in the compound of the Secret Heart Sisters in Juba to touch base with you and take a cup of tea under that beautiful trees you have in your compound. And that will also enable us to touch base on many things. I'm so happy that you have really given us your experience and the need to expand our frontiers. This is very important. And also, I would like to thank Sister Angel from DRC, who has given us the experience of reaching out to the people, especially to the people in authority and the people in decision making. And this is exactly what our lovely sister from Kenya, Sister Kanini, has just spoken about it, that she was able to work in between two communities that were seeing themselves as enemies, but not as human beings. And she was able to go in between the two communities to be able to really help them to see from the lens of the nonviolence, to see themselves as human beings. And that has encouraged the young children to be able to call for, to ask for some support. They need to be given a support to change their narratives. They have been brought up in a situation where they see the neighbors as enemies, but someone has just come and helped them, and now they are seeing themselves as human beings that can be able to collaborate. This is very important and very, very interesting. I also wanted to concur with my colleague, Mr. Emmanuel, from what Archbishop Fortunatus was telling us, that we need to appreciate the diversity of the creation. And this is very important, you know, that if we begin to appreciate the diversity of creation and to, you know, understand and learn how to manage to benefit from this diversity, definitely we shall not be selfish. And selfishness and, you know, has created a lot of misery and suffering in our context. And I think this is very important. We have to be pragmatic. And I think that was a word I got from one of the sisters that was trying to refer to some of the vices we have in the continent. We need to be pragmatic, and we need to see the reality, and we need to know exactly what is happening and how do we approach this kind of situation. This is very important. Resetting the computers and or going back to the original, spirit of creation. I think this is something also very powerful that we have had, and I think I just wanted to conclude by, not thanking, but thanking so much my sister from Uganda, Timango. The first time for me to see her on the screen, despite the fact that I've been in this town of Juba for many, many years, but maybe she has come of reason to Juba. But I think the experience she has shared on reaching out to the Toronto boys and the niggers and all the other youngsters who have not been able to get help, to get out from the way they were molded by the context, by the social context, by the economic context, by even the tribal context, which she described as the cancer of South Sudan. We need to really be able to work with our chemotherapy so that we are able to address the chemotherapy I'm talking about is the nonviolent nonviolence activism that we need to reach out to address some of these challenging situations we have been exposed to by the experiences of those sisters who have spoken. Thank you very much. I beg to stop here, and I don't even could not conclude without forgetting my friend and colleague from the Nuba Mountains, this young energetic man. I wish him all the best in his life to come, and I think this will be one of the guys who will be able to change the situation in Sudan in the long run. Let us mark his name, Mr. Al-Ful. Is it the name?
Isaiah.
Yes.
Isaiah Al-Ful. The last name is Al-Ful?
The last name is Al-Ful, and
Al-Ful, yes, okay.
Yes, yeah. I understand you are also my neighbor. Al-Ful is the grandfather.
Yes, thank you very much. You're welcome.
Sorry, James, we are running short of time, but we'll give you time to just respond. You're welcome. Thank you, Father James, and for that image of the white cross on the top of the hill. I think it's very hopeful. Yeah, I saw Sister Karina. Karina, you can give us your reflection just shortly. If you can hear me, okay. Karina. Yes.
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you so much. I am very happy. I am living here in South Sudan, and I understand the experience of Mary and other people. So what I would like to say is, I think so that we are very happy to have these convictions on nonviolence, and very happy to contribute to transform this society here in South Sudan. For me, it's wonderful to see in our process of training that people from Nuer and Dinka can be joined together, come together, forgetting all the issues of hate, to really be open, to forgive that situation, that's the experience from the war. So I think so that this lifestyle of non-violence is the way that we can transform society. That is what I would like to say. Thank you so much.
Sister Karina, and we would not want to leave out Martha. I see Martha, you are back. Martha Okumu, just a word to encourage after hearing the stories?
Good evening, everyone. Sorry, I stepped out for a while. I really enjoyed listening to these sessions, and especially at this time that the continent or even the whole world is going through a lot of challenges. One thing which I really noted was the impact that nonviolence had on Eshaya's life. I mean, what he learned from Pax Christi training, and he actually implemented it, showing that active nonviolence is something that needs to be incorporated in the way we do, the way we live our life, for us to have a transformative world. So it was very heartening to listen to him, to see that actually what you are doing makes a difference in the whole world. Then, of course, the reflections by Sister Timango was very touching, in that how can you go to the community and make the community want to work with you by building trust. For me, that was really, really touching. And it shows that the gospel of nonviolence is truly alive. Given a chance, it can come to fruition, and people in conflict can actually benefit by listening to the gospel of nonviolence. The other thing which really touched me was how can institutions, looking at what St. Paul's is doing in relation to what the benefits that Eshaya talked about, how can learning institutions be used as a platform for engaging the students as well as the community in promoting nonviolence as a way of life? So to me, it really resonated with me, because we are actually planning on a roundtable discussion on the role of
Am I the one who is experiencing your Martha's? Oh.
Sorry, we lost her connection, but she is reconnecting right now. Let's see.
Okay, let's see.
Martha, may you continue?
Yeah, sorry about
Martha,
that.
You are
in that violence into our lives and into the community that we are in. And for me, what really resonated so much was the mere fact that the teachings of active nonviolence actually resonates with people, and they can actually go back to the community and do something practical about it. And as I said, as an organization, we are having a roundtable discussion on the role of faith-based universities, looking at the values in promoting peace building and conflict resolution in East Africa. So this webinar was really an eye-opener for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Martha, for that. And I just want to read Father Matthew's response, because he was not able to join us. I mean, he has been with us, but wasn't able to come and share. He says, thank you for sharing your experiences. I'm more and more convinced that nonviolence is the future for humanity. It is worth committing ourselves and engaging young people. So that is from Father Matthew. Now, of course, every good thing has an end. So we are kind of winding down. And at the end, maybe we need to, I need to underscore, how the church, by its very nature, is invited to be a leader for nonviolence. And there are many ways by bringing alive what we are hearing today. There's so much happening, and the church, I think, can capture that and bring it, so that more and more people will see that there is another way of addressing the type of situations we have, that the militaristic ways, the violence, it's only creating more violence. And so I think the church is being invited, and I have had that during this sharing, the call for us to show this other way. And so these reflections, we should not leave them here. We carry on the reflections, as I shall be pointing out as I conclude. So in Pope Francis' new book entitled, I Ask You in the Name of God, 10 Prayers for a Future of Hope, His Holiness quotes Martin Luther King, who said, "It is no longer a question of choosing between violence and non-violence, but between non-violence and non-existence." Then Pope Francis says, the choice is up to us. In this webinar, we have received the gift of powerful examples of non-violent way. Pope Francis is calling us to away from the threat of non-existence to the fullness of life at the core of gospel non-violence. This webinar and the webinar from Latin America and the Caribbean will be available soon on the Pax Christi International YouTube. We also have the Asia Pacific. Please share this link with others to help shine light on the non-violent way forward. We thank all that participated in this webinar. And I would like in a special way to also acknowledge the presence of His Excellency Archbishop Fortunatus, that was able to come and join us. Archbishop Odama would have wanted to be with us, but something cropped up that he was not able to be part of this. But we shall be getting his reflection and sharing with you. And we thank those change makers who have opened their hearts to us and shared their stories. The people who have chosen the path of non-violence. So, and showing us that it is possible. Since we have limited time, I'm inviting each one present here to continue these reflections with us. You have listened and have been touched by these stories in your own unique ways and have interacted with the questions that guided our panelists. Please share with us your own reflections and send to us via nonviolence@paxchristi.net. I think that will be displayed. Also continue these conversations in your own communities, in the schools, and in other learning institutions, and in the different networks. You heard the Archbishop tell us about selfies, and a lot of you have mentioned that, using the social media to also spread this gospel of non-violence. And listen to more stories such as this among you. Capture them and send them to us, and we shall spread them, as they say, as wildfire. We will be willing to spread those stories. We really hope this will be an ongoing conversation. So we shouldn't end here. We are being challenged to develop that tree of hope, as we have had, and to put more white crosses on the top of mountains so that people can see the white cross as opposed to seeing weapons. I want to thank our two interpreters, Isabel and Anne-Marie, who made our conversation today possible by also translating for us from French. Please take a few moments to respond to the survey that will appear on your screen. You will also receive a link in the follow-up email. And thank you very much. And I speak on behalf of the people that I mentioned earlier, the men, the women, and children and young people of Africa and the world that have walked this path and continue to walk this path. So I'm just giving maybe a second for the display of that survey. Are we having it now or to be sent later?
Yes, the survey will be sent later by email.
Okay, that's good. Okay, that's good. So now to conclude our time together, which has been a time of bonding, a time of sharing, and that is in the African spirit, because in Africa, we meet as we had around a tree to share our experiences, to share a meal together. Okay, we didn't have a meal to share here, but when we do meet in those circles, we will do that. So this was real appropriate that we shared, we came together to share. So in conclusion, I invite Jujune Serukabuza to lead us in the final prayer, and it will be in French. So I would invite those who do not speak French to click your English button so that we can hear the prayer. Welcome, Jujune.
Dieudonné, bienvenue.
Thank you, Sister
Merci.
Where is it? Thank you, Sister Wamuyu.
Thank you.
I am inviting you to pray with me. I am going to pray in French, and you join me in this prayer. Au nom du Père et du Fils et du Saint-Esprit. Amen.
In the name of the Father,
Dieu notre Père
Spirit,
qui es aux cieux et qui est parmi nous,
Father, you who are in
source
heaven
d'amour
amongst
et
us, you are
destin de
made
notre
of
vie,
love.
tu nous as assistés
And
et
you
inspirés pendant
have
nos
supported
échanges.
us. You've been a source of
Nous te
inspiration
louons, nous te
during
remercions
our
par notre Seigneur
difficulties,
Jésus-Christ non
and
violent, qui
we,
apporte la paix
through
à
Christ's
notre
passion
monde,
and death,
qui est en
we
proie
are
des
being
puissances du
supported,
mal et de l'injustice.
and you helped us try and
Grâce
put an
à
end
ton
to
amour
injustice. Thanks to
transformateur,
your
à
transforming
ton
love,
esprit non violent,
thanks to your
nos
non-violent
cœurs
spirit,
sont
our
convertis.
fears have
Nos
been
hostilités
converted,
sont transformées en
our hostilities
réconciliation.
are being transformed.
Notre haine et vengeance
Our
cèdent la place au
hatred
pardon.
has given rise to
Nos
forgiving.
divisions sont
Our
transformées en
divisions have been
communauté, en
transformed
amitié,
into
et les nations
communities,
cherchent
friendship,
ensemble
and
le chemin
nations
de la
all
paix.
together are looking for a way
Ô
towards
notre
peace.
Seigneur,
In the
tu nous l'as
name
promis,
of the Lord who
donne-nous
promised
cette
us,
paix durable,
please give us
la
this
paix
sustainable
intérieure qui
peace,
persiste
this inner
même
peace
dans
that
un
will remain
environnement hostile,
even in a hostile
pendant les
environment.
troubles, les maladies, la
When we
pauvreté,
are facing
malgré
turmoil,
les événements de la vie,
poverty,
c'est la
difficulties,
paix
in spite
intérieure
of the
que le
difficulties
monde
of
ne peut
life,
pas nous
this inner
enlever.
peace is there.
C'est cette paix intérieure sans
This
peur
inner peace
qui amène les
and
personnes
the fact that we are
engagées
fearless
dans la
allows
non-violence active.
the people who are
Tous
engaged
au don
in
d'amour
active
et de
nonviolence.
paix,
So
nous ne cesserons jamais
when we
d'autoglorifier,
are
Seigneur.
full of love and of peace, we'll keep on
C'est cette
working on
paix
your side,
qui
Lord.
anime les
This peace
bâtisseurs de la paix,
also
qui
pushes
persévèrent dans
the
l'édification de la
peace
paix,
builders to go ahead
dans la transformation pacifique de la
in
violence
peaceful
et
transformation
dans
of
la lutte
violence
pour les droits
and
humains.
in the fight for human rights.
Ô Dieu notre Père,
Oh,
nous te demandons tout cela au nom de
our
Jésus-Christ
Father,
notre
we are
Seigneur.
asking all of
Amen.
this in the name of
Amen.
Jesus
Au nom du
Christ.
Père
Amen.
et du Fils et
In
du
the name
Saint-Esprit.
of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Thank you, Vijune, for that powerful prayer. And thank you, everybody, for coming.